Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the days of sword, silence, and stewed turnips. You're in full armor, your feet are wrapped in straw sandals, and your chest rises and falls beneath layers of lacquered plate. Ahead lies a battle mud, chaos. A lot of yelling in very formal Japanese, but right now you're crouched beside a low wooden table. The scent of miso broth is rising like a warm cloud, and your chopsticks hover over a bowl of rice that's still steaming in the dawn air. A thin sliver of pickled plum rests on top like a warning. It's a new day, and you'll probably be charging into a clamor of arrows by noon, but for now, you eat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I love seeing the little map you all create. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a samurai, not the cartoon kind with a single perfect top knot and a katana the size of a canoe. You're the real deal gritty, slightly hungry, probably nursing a blister or two. You've been up since before the crows, lacing armor with stiff fingers, doing that tight-lipped, I'm not scared face, even though everyone knows you kind of are. But tradition says eat first. You squat beside your morning meal miso soup with flecks of tofu, sticky white rice, a daikon pickle that's so sour it could peel paint, and green tea so bitter it could scold you for sleeping in. It's simple, yes, but everything here has meaning. That bowl of miso isn't just broth, it's balance, salty and warming. It helps ground your stomach before adrenaline kicks it over. Tofu cubes bob on the surface like tiny white boats, while seaweed threads swirl slowly beneath, whispering of the ocean you may never see again. Rice, of course, is everything. Not just food, but currency, rank, reward. Entire provinces are measured in koku, how much rice they produce. One koku, cha, one samurai's yearly rice ration. So every grain you eat, someone counted it. And the umeboshi pickled plum. Oh, that thing. It's there to keep your rice from spoiling. But also, legend says it gives you courage, clears your throat, maybe even purifies your soul. Spoiler, it mostly puckers your face and makes you reach for water. Now imagine this. Your hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from the thought of what this meal might be. Your last one. No pressure. You chew slowly. Outside the paper-thin walls, a conch shell horn moans across the hills. It's a signal time to move, time to mount up, time to maybe not come back. But inside this kitchen, it's all ritual stillness. A young page flits past the doorway, clutching a stack of lacquered bento boxes. You hear armor creak. Someone clears their throat. The rice sticks stubbornly to your chopsticks, and you try not to take it as a bad omen. Back then, breakfast wasn't a slapdash thing. No cereal bars, no sugary nonsense. Food was a ritual, quiet, focused, necessary. And it wasn't just about energy, it was about mental state. You eat calmly, so you become calm. Samurai didn't want a jittery breakfast. You don't want to charge into battle thinking about indigestion. Here's a mainstream fact. The typical samurai diet leaned heavily, plant-based. Despite the mighty warrior image, meat was rare. In fact, for centuries, Buddhist influence made eating animal flesh something you mostly avoided publicly, at least. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some samurai, before battle, would place a grain of rice under their tongue and vow not to swallow it until the fighting was done. Kind of like a grim little timer. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or just a poetic legend, exaggerated by Edo period storytellers. But still, imagine fighting with a grain of rice on your tongue. Every shout, every gasp could ruin the ritual. As you finish your bowl, you nod slightly to yourself, to the room, to the ancestors. Nothing flashy, There's no last bite drama here. You set your chopsticks down gently. You don't say anything. That would be weird. Outside, a stable boy tightens saddle straps. Nearby, a captain is getting his beard combed. Somewhere, someone's already polishing their death poem. But right now, your belly is warm, your hands are steady. The miso lingers like salt and earth on your tongue. You are ready, sort of. You wake before the sun. Not because you're eager, but because tradition says so, and because your superior will throw a sandal at you if you don't. The tatami beneath you still holds the warmth from your body, but the air is sharp and cool, brushing against your face like the whisper of a ghost. You sit up slowly, joints clicking, breath forming faint puffs in the dimness. There's no alarm clock, just the rhythmic sweep of a servant's broom outside and the faint rustle of robes being adjusted. You fold your bedding neatly, as always, and tuck it away in the corner. Your movements are practiced, precise. No time to linger. No time to let the dread of the day sneak in through the cracks. Outside, the world is a soft gray wash trees silhouetted against the first faint blush of morning, dew gathering on the tiled roofs. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell hums. Its deep tone seems to vibrate right through your ribs. A monk's chant rides the breeze, slow and low like the earth itself humming. You bow your head, just slightly, not for the monk, not even for the gods. Really, it's for the moment, for surviving another dawn. You're still here, for now. Before you eat, you perform a cleansing ritual, nothing dramatic, just a splash of cold water on the hands, a rinse of the mouth. It's meant to purify the body before anything enters it. You don't question it, even if the battlefield awaits, even if your nerves buzz like angry bees. You do this part slowly, with care. You kneel, back straight, and press your palms together. A short prayer to the stove god, to your ancestors, maybe even to your intestines. You thank them all for whatever lies ahead, even if what lies ahead is pointy and screams in old Japanese. Then silence. That strange, sacred pause before breakfast. No one speaks much in the morning. It's not just discipline, it's a way to keep the mind calm. Mouth closed, stomach open. You listen to the hiss of water heating in an iron kettle, the quiet clink of ceramic bowls being arranged. Somewhere, fish are being unwrapped from yesterday's drying boards. They smell salty and faintly sour, like the ocean had a long walk through a field and decided to stay a while. Here's something mainstream samurai culture valued discipline in even the smallest acts. Morning routines were treated almost like martial arts, ritualized, repeatable, and meant to sharpen not just the body, but the mind. If you couldn't tie your hakama evenly, how could you trust your sword swing? And now for your quirky tidbit, some samurai slept sitting up, armor half on, blade propped beside them, just in case. Apparently, lying flat was considered vulnerable. And besides, who wants to be caught in battle with bedhead? Historians still argue whether these ultra-formal morning rituals were truly followed during wartime or were more an idealized version passed down in romanticized texts. But the idea remains composure. At dawn was a kind of armor, one that didn't clang when you walked. As breakfast is prepared, you inspect your gear. Armor polished last night reflects the weak light. Leather straps are checked and tightened. Your short tanto blade gets a quick inspection too, just in case it needs to make a cameo later. Nearby, another samurai hums quietly. An old tune with no words. His fingers drum on his thigh. He's trying not to think too hard. That makes two of you. And just outside, the kitchen begins to breathe. These aren't grand halls filled with sizzling stoves or fire-breathing grates. The kitchens are humble, tucked behind sliding wooden doors, with earthen floors and soot-streaked beams. A hearth pit glows faintly, its coals carried over from the night before. No electricity, no timers, just muscle memory and guesswork. The cooks move like dancers, stepping around each other, hands quick and quiet. They aren't samurai, but their job is just as life or death. Feed too slowly, and warriors march out hungry. Feed carelessly, and someone gets sick. On a good day, no one notices them. That's the goal. The menu's not a mystery, though it changes slightly depending on the clan, the season, or what the fish seller dropped off that morning. It's always a variation on a theme. Rice, soup, pickle, tea, sometimes a scrap of grilled fish, sometimes dried mushrooms boiled until they give up their secrets. You smell it before you see it, the unmistakable aroma of fermented soy and broth. Your bowl is placed gently in front of you. Miso again. Good. You like miso. It's like edible confidence. You bow slightly again. To the cook, to the bowl, to the moment. You're not religious. Exactly. But food this early demands a kind of reverence. And then finally you eat. The warmth flows into your chest, your stomach, your limbs. A strange calm settles over you. You focus on the flavors, salty, earthy, slightly sweet. You don't wolf it down. No one does. That would be uncivilized. Besides, if you choke before battle, everyone will remember it forever. Not in a good way. There's a rhythm to these mornings. Wake, cleanse, bow, eat, adjust armor, go. You've done it dozens of times, maybe hundreds, but every morning feels like it could be the first or the last. That's the weird part. You never get used to it. Not really. And so you finish your meal in silence, setting your bowl down with quiet finality. A soft thud that sounds, for a second, like a war drum. It's time. The kitchen doesn't look like much. You wouldn't call it glamorous. In fact, you might not even notice it at first. Just a squat wooden room at the edge of the barracks, walls stained with decades of steam and a ceiling blackened by generations of smoke. But step inside, and suddenly, the air changes. The scent hits you first wood ash, boiling rice, dried fish, and something just a little sour that probably used to be a radish. It's a symphony of survival, composed not with trumpets, but with ladles, soot, and clay pots. You duck beneath a low beam. The floor is packed dirt. No floorboards, no tiles. A cook stoops over a sunken hearth called an irori, nudging coals like a sleepy dragon tamer. To one side, a wide iron kettle sits like a black moon, its surface rippling gently as soup simmers inside. Behind it, skewers of eel dangle from bamboo strings, gently drying like little meat flags. No metal stoves, no knobs to turn, just fire and patience. You're not here to cook. Of course, you're a samurai. Your role in this space is to show up when summoned, accept what's given with a bow, and eat with as little complaint as possible. But you can't help watching. The choreography here is impressive. One servant squats to grind sesame seeds on a stone wheel. Another rinses leafy greens in cold water carried in from the river this morning. Someone's gutting a fish with a blade that's seen more action than half the swords outside. They don't waste time, or food, or even fish heads. Everything is used. Bones for broth, skins for drying, guts for fertilizer. It's a zero-waste operation centuries before that became a trendy phrase. Mainstream historical fact incoming, most samurai didn't live in luxury, especially not the lower ranks. Contrary to popular belief, only the high-level daimyo had access to elaborate meals. The average warrior lived lean, earthy food, minimal seasoning, and not much variety, but it kept you alive and sharp. That said, here's a delightfully odd tidbit in some regions. Samurai believed garlic would dull the senses and reduce sword hand steadiness. So while peasants chewed it freely, warriors often avoided it. You, however, sneak a whiff of it sizzling in the pan and wonder if maybe dulling your senses sounds kind of nice before a battle. Historians still argue whether kitchens like these were this rustic in every castle, or whether that's just how artists romanticized them later. Some scrolls depict kitchens so elegant they'd make a modern chef weep, but others just wood, smoke, and a woman with no eyebrows stirring millet over open flame. You lean against the doorway and watch a cook open a thick ceramic jar. Inside is miso deep brown, dense and fragrant. Not the store-bought stuff with cute labels. This miso looks like it's seen things. It's alive, fermenting for months, even years. A spoonful of it goes into the soup, where it melts slowly like a muddy sun. To your left, a younger kitchen boy is furiously pounding steamed rice into mochi with a wooden mallet. It's not ceremonial. He's just doing it to prep travel food. Still, it's mesmerizing. Thwack, turn, thwack. Turn his hands risk becoming part of the rice at any moment. Outside, a rooster finally remembers its job and crows. Everyone ignores it. A girl your age walks by with a tray of pickled vegetables, bright yellow taquan, pale green cucumber, and something that might be eggplant, but also might be regret. You nod politely. She doesn't smile. No one does this early. You walk further in and notice the wall of tools, ladles of all sizes, whisks made of bundled reeds, knives shaped like the missing pieces of a puzzle. A basket of mushrooms sits in the corner shiitake, black and shriveled like tiny umbrellas after a rough parade. You pinch one and feel its texture leathery, woody, almost alive. That's the good kind, the kind that turns a bland broth into something you'll remember while staring down a cavalry charge. On a narrow shelf, you spot bundles of kombu-thick seaweed used for stock. The ocean, distant as it is, still finds its way into your bowl, as does the forest, as does the field. Food isn't just survival, it's geography. You eat your landscape. There's a low murmur as the head cook mutters instructions to her assistant. She's old, probably fed samurai before you were born. Her sleeves are scorched, her hands steady. You'd trust her with your stomach before you'd trust half the officers here. And then you see it, the rice pot. Not some polished machine, but a wide, heavy-lidded cauldron over slow-burning coals. The rice is cooking gently, evenly, its surface just beginning to puff and glisten. No timers. She knows by smell. A test spoonful is scooped out. She presses it between her fingers, nods. It's ready. There's no fanfare when it's served, no drum roll, just a quiet moment where warm bowls are passed hand to hand. You hold yours with both palms, feeling the heat seep into your skin. A strange comfort, this edible stillness. You find your spot in the corner, kneel, and take a breath. A bite of rice, a sip of soup, a crunch of pickle. You chew slowly, letting the flavors roll over your tongue like tides. You don't speak. No one does. You just eat. There's a pungent jar sitting at the edge of the kitchen shelf. It looks unassuming, dull brown ceramic with a cloth tied over the top. But open it, and your eyes water instantly. The smell is somewhere between salty brine, rotting cabbage, and what fear probably tastes like. Welcome to the wide, weird world of samurai fermentation. You might not love it, but your gut sure does. Fermented foods were the backbone of the samurai diet, and not just because they lasted longer. They were seen as medicine, energy in a jar. A secret weapon that worked not with swords or strategy, but with bacteria. Let's be real, you need all the help you can get. Marching all day in armor that squeaks, sweating through linen layers, swinging steel until your arms go numb? That's hard on the body, especially the parts that turn rice into energy. Fermented foods like pickles, miso, soy sauce. Natto helped keep samurai guts in fighting shape. You peer into one jar and see tsukemono pickled vegetables. Carrots turned the color of sunrise. Radishes translucent from salt. Cucumbers curled into themselves like shy snakes. They're more than garnish. They preserve vitamins, spark your appetite, and frankly, give your rice a reason to exist. Then there's natto, the sticky, stringy, notoriously smelly fermented soybeans. You've had it before. It's a little like eating spider webs made of peanuts. Slimy, sour, strange, but it's packed with protein, easy to digest, and, according to older samurai, clears the mind like wind through a pine forest. Or maybe they just wanted to scare new recruits. Mainstream fact: Japan's centuries-old tradition of fermentation comes from necessity. With no refrigeration and limited access to fresh meat, preserving food became both an art and a science. Almost everything could be pickled, dried, smoked, or soured into something edible, and in many cases, surprisingly delicious. Now for your quirky tidbit: some samurai wore tiny packets of dried fermented paste tied to their belts. If they couldn't make it back to camp for a proper meal, they'd stir it into hot water and drink it like soup. Instant miso, medieval convenience food. Who needs cup noodles? Historians still argue whether these fermentation techniques were learned from Chinese medicine, passed through monk scholars, or developed independently in remote mountain villages. But wherever they came from, they stuck around, often literally. In the corner of the kitchen, you see a cook stirring a barrel with a wooden paddle taller than she is. It's shoyu, soy sauce, in the making. Months of soybeans, wheat, salt, and careful aging. A single drop of this dark liquid can transform bland rice into something that makes your eyebrows lift. The barrel itself looks ancient wood darkened by decades of use. Iron bands rusted, but still holding. You lean in and inhale. It's sweet, sharp, and earthy, like the smell of deep thyme. You think this is what patience tastes like. Someone beside you offers a small ceramic plate. It holds a slice of pickled daikon, a sliver of fermented plum, and a few curls of something dark green you can't identify. You try them. Each one is a flavor punch. Sour, salty, faintly sweet, a little bitter. They wake up your mouth. They remind you you're alive. Not in battle yet, still tasting. You think about the ritual behind it. How much of samurai strength came not from muscle, but from microbiome. From this careful tending of invisible helpers, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding an entire ecosystem inside your gut. Outside, a horn sounds again. Not urgent, not yet, just a reminder that the morning isn't endless. You take another bite, slower this time. You notice how the fermented flavors linger longer than fresh ones. They hang in the air, cling to your tongue, whisper in your nose. Nothing about them is neutral. Everything fermented has an opinion. You glance around. Other warriors are doing the same, quietly savoring their pickles, dipping into miso, chewing thoughtfully. No one says it, but everyone knows what you eat becomes part of your body. And what becomes part of your body might be cut open by noon, so better choose wisely. In the corner, a young apprentice coughs and tries to hide it. He's chewing natto with a look of quiet betrayal. You give him a nod that says, "Yeah, I know, but you'll survive." He glares at the beans, then takes another bite. There's something beautiful about it, this reliance on decay, this trust in transformation. Rot made useful. You eat what time has softened, what bacteria have changed, and in doing so, you become stronger, a little braver, a little stinkier, perhaps, but ready. And as you finish the last slurp of miso, you think fermentation is kind of like battle, messy, slow, full of unexpected outcomes, but when done right, it keeps you going. It's time to pack your bento. Not for a picnic, mind you, unless your idea of a picnic includes flailing spears, shouted orders, and people falling over dramatically. No, this bento is your battlefield lifeline. Your little lacquered box of calm in a world about to descend into noise and dust. You kneel before it. The box is rectangular, made of dark wood rubbed smooth from years of use. It's lighter than you expect, sturdy, plain, and practical, like everything else in your life. There are no smiling panda faces in the rice, no heart-shaped eggs. This is not cute food. This is war food. The first thing to go in a rice brick? Not a fluffy cloud of steamed perfection like you had at breakfast. This one's been compressed, chilled, and wrapped tightly in dried bamboo leaf. It's meant to stay edible for hours, even days. You hold it in your palm, it's dense, slightly sticky, and still radiates the faintest warmth from earlier. You press it in, it fits snugly into the first compartment like a silent companion. Next, the plum. Yes, that plum, the same aggressive little umeboshi you faced this morning. You tuck it into the rice, not just for flavor, not even mostly for flavor. It's antibacterial, you know, preserves the rice, keeps it from turning weird halfway through your march, and if you believe the elders, it wards off evil and dysentery, 2 birds, 1 stone. You consider adding some dried fish. There's a pile of them nearby, tiny white anchovies, salted and sun-dried, curled like commas. They're crunchy, slightly chewy, and deeply salty. You pinch a few and drop them into the second compartment. They rattle like bones. You pretend not to notice. Then comes the seaweed, nori. If you're lucky, dried, thin, crackly. It can be eaten alone, or used to wrap your rice brick so you don't get your hands greasy. Practical and tasty. You fold a few sheets carefully and lay them on top. Here's your mainstream history fact: bento culture in Japan began centuries ago, with soldiers like you carrying portable meals to the battlefield. These early bentos were nothing like the elaborate convenience store art forms of modern Tokyo. They were simple, efficient, and built to survive being dropped, jostled, or forgotten at the bottom of a saddlebag. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some samurai wrapped their bentos with messages, short poems, family crests, or even hidden instructions in case they died. That rice brick in your hand might have a tiny farewell note tucked beneath it. You try not to check. Historians still argue whether field bentos were made by family, servants, or the soldiers themselves. Some accounts suggest high-ranking samurai had entire food preparation teams who followed the army at a distance. Others believe warriors just stuffed whatever they could find into a box and hoped for the best. You glance across the room. Others are doing the same, assembling their meals with quiet precision. One man wraps his rice ball in an extra layer of paper, ties it with string, and slips it into a pouch on his belt. Another checks his tea flask, shakes it, and listens like he's gauging the weather. Speaking of tea, yes, you bring some. Cold, of course, brewed strong, then left to chill in a bamboo flask. It tastes grassy, bitter, and somehow reassuring. You don't need it to be fancy. You need it to keep your throat from turning to parchment halfway through a sword fight. You finish your bento and tie the box shut with a strip of cloth. It's surprisingly comforting, this small act of control, in a day that offers so little of it. You slip it into your travel pouch, tighten the cord, and pat it once, like you're telling it, "Be good, stay put." Outside, the camp is stirring louder now. Hooves clomp, orders are barked, someone's coughing with suspicious enthusiasm. You check your armor again, chest plate. Check. Shin guards. Check. Elbow guards. Still annoying. Everything squeaks faintly when you move, but you're used to it. A page walks past you, holding an enormous tray of field bentos, the kind stacked for captains and commanders. You spot one with gold trim and wonder what's inside, maybe grilled river eel, or tamago rolled into perfect yellow spirals. You hope they choke on it. Lovingly, of course. The final item in your kit: dried chestnuts. These little nuggets of tree-borne protein are a favorite among your unit. Chewy, slightly sweet, and surprisingly satisfying. You pop one into your mouth now. It tastes like fall, like forest, like something that didn't come from a battlefield. You tuck the rest into a cloth pouch at your hip. And just like that, you're ready. You stand slowly, letting the bento settle against your side. It swings gently, a quiet wait. The funny thing is, you probably won't even get to eat it. Not in one go, anyway. You'll steal bites between skirmishes. Maybe hunch over behind a tree and chew while arrows fly overhead. You'll eat standing up, sweating, maybe bleeding, but you'll eat. Because food isn't luxury. It's survival. It's defiance. It's something you still get to choose. And if fate allows, you'll open that box when the fighting's over, lift the lid, and see the plums still sitting there, just slightly squished, waiting. The horse beneath you snorts, flicks its ears, and shifts its weight impatiently. You adjust your grip on the reins and shift your bento pouch slightly so it doesn't bounce off your thigh every time the saddle creaks. You're armored, armed, and packed, but what you're really wondering is how long it'll be before your rice brick goes cold. Welcome to the battlefield commute. You're not galloping into glory just yet. First comes the long, dusty, mildly humiliating trudge to wherever your commander insists is strategically advantageous. You squint against the wind, trying not to think too hard about your own sweat pooling under your shoulder plates. Rations on horseback aren't elegant. You can't exactly whip out your chopsticks and start a civilized meal while bouncing down a ravine, so you snack in shifts, or when the column halts for breath, you pull the rice brick from its bamboo leaf, bite into it like it's an apple, and chew slowly while the horse grumbles beneath you. It's dry, a little chewy, but it fills the stomach. That's what matters. You reach into your pouch again and pull out a strip of dried squid. You gnaw on it thoughtfully while watching the distant ridgeline. It's salty, rubbery, and faintly fishy in the way that makes you question every life choice that led to this moment. But hey, it lasts forever and doesn't spoil. That's enough for today. Mainstream historical fact: samurai supply lines during long campaigns were notoriously fragile. Food had to be transported by foot, cart, or horseback, so the emphasis was always on lightweight, non-perishable, and edible on the move, jerky, rice cakes, dried tofu, roasted beans, and pressed rice were the norm. Nothing fresh, nothing fancy. Now your quirky tidbit. Some samurai reportedly carried hotan dried gourds, hollowed out and filled with roasted millet, which they'd eat by the handful like trail mix. You picture it now, a warrior in full armor reaching into his gourd like a snack-addled squirrel, battle-hardened yet hangry? Historians still argue whether samurai on the march had any regular meal breaks or if they just ate when they could. Some scrolls suggest pre-dawn meals, followed by only snacking throughout the day. Others claim there were enforced meal stops, but only for higher-ranking officers. In your case, the rule seems to be if no one's yelling at you, grab a bite. You tuck the last bit of squid into your cheek, pirate style, and let it soften while you scan the path ahead. The convoy of riders and foot soldiers stretches far behind you. Somewhere in that line, someone's already out of food. Someone else forgot to pack pickles, and someone is loudly complaining that the plum was too sour. You all march anyway. A sudden jolt, the horse steps in a rut and your tea flask taps against your side. You unstopper it and take a careful sip. It's gone tepid, still bitter, still green, still doing its job. As the sun climbs higher, the heat starts to bite. You loosen the scarf around your neck, pull your helmet back just slightly, and wonder what genius decided that black lacquered armor was a good idea in full sun. You fantasize about cucumbers in snow, or maybe a single ice cube. You've heard tales of ice merchants in Kyoto who stored snow from winter to sell in summer. You're not sure if it's true. You envy them anyway. The commander calls for a halt, not a rest, just a pause while scouts check the next valley. You swing one leg over and slide off your horse, knees creaking like old temple doors. You stretch, your armor groans, and then, with exaggerated nonchalance, You lean against a tree and unwrap a seaweed-wrapped onigiri from your pouch. It's been squished, a little warm. The seaweed's gone soft, but you bite into it anyway, and it's glorious. The rice is seasoned with a hint of vinegar. Inside, a tiny dollop of salted fish. Nothing spectacular, but out here, in the quiet moment before battle, it might as well be a banquet. You're not alone. Around you, other warriors do the same, some sitting, some still standing. Someone peels a roasted sweet potato and passes half to his friend. Another crunches down on a rice cracker so loudly it startles a bird into flight. There's a strange peace to it all, the moment before chaos. Food becomes a tether to normalcy, a reassurance that you're still human, not just a weapon waiting to be used. You glance at your box, still half full, and close it again. Better save the rest. No telling when the next break will come. You tighten the strap, retie your armor, and swing back into the saddle. Ahead, a flag rises in the breeze, the signal to move. You nudge your horse forward, bentos swaying by your side, stomach steadied by salt and starch, tongue still faintly tingling from that overly aggressive plum. The battle is coming, but for now, at least, you're fed. The wind picks up. You can taste the dust in the back of your throat as the column slows at the base of a hill. The armor on your chest clinks softly with each breath. You dismount, hand your reins to a sleepy page boy, and follow your commander toward a low rise. There's something strange happening, an odd hush falling across the ranks. Not fear exactly, not yet, just the settling weight of what's next. You know that sound, the one before it all begins, that hollow, stretched-out silence where even the birds seem to forget how to chirp. That's what this is. So, naturally, someone makes tea. You spot the setup immediately, a small traveling brazier, the kind that folds up tight and fits into a lacquered box. A soldier kneels beside it, coaxing a little flame from dried grass and charcoal, while another unpacks a pouch of powdered green tea. Not the weak, leafy stuff. No, this is matcha finely ground, grassy, bitter as betrayal, and thick enough to chew. You're invited to sit. You do. Carefully. There's a low tray passed around with small cups, ceramic, chipped, probably stolen from a monastery kitchen. You cradle one in both hands, letting the warmth seep through your gloves. The man serving the tea, an older retainer with creased eyes and one too many scars, doesn't speak. He just pours. And you drink. The first sip coats your mouth in that familiar, earthy bitterness. There's no sugar, of course, no milk, no apologies. It's just you and the tea, and the faint whistle of wind through the grass. This moment is ritual, intention. You're not just hydrating. You're reminding yourself that the world still has form, that even in war, there is a way to hold a cup, bow your head, and acknowledge presence. One breath, one swallow, one more heartbeat before the noise. Mainstream fact: the tea ceremony, or chanoyu, had strong connections to the samurai class. More than just a social activity, it was a mental sharpening focused on calmness, presence, and discipline. Warlords hosted tea gatherings to impress, negotiate, or even settle disputes without drawing a sword. Quirky tidbit: some samurai, particularly those of the later Sengoku period, carried tiny travel tea kits, a miniature whisk, a ceramic cup, a container of powdered matcha all rolled up neatly in cloth. It was said that a warrior should be prepared to fight, die, or host a tea ceremony with equal grace. Historians still argue whether battlefield tea was truly common or just a poetic flourish added by Edo-era storytellers. But it's recorded that generals like Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi took tea seriously. And if they could sip matcha hours before ordering a siege, so can you. You shift slightly on the packed earth, cup in hand, eyes scanning the tree line. The steam from your tea curls upward and vanishes into the morning air. Everything feels sharper now. Not panicked, just clear. Like you've polished your mind the same way you polish your blade. No distractions. Just the warmth of your hands around the cup, the taste on your tongue, and the quiet around you. Someone nearby coughs. Another scratches behind his ear, mutters a short prayer, and adjusts his sword hilt. No one talks about fear. But they all sip. The man next to you offers a tiny rice cake higashi, dry and crumbly, made from sugar and rice flour. How he got it out here is anyone's guess. You take half, let it melt on your tongue. It's subtly sweet, almost too elegant for the setting. But you don't question it. You remember something your grandfather said once: tea clears the dust of battle from the soul, even if the battle hasn't started yet. At the time, you thought he was being dramatic. Now you get it. The tea's nearly gone. The brazier is dimming. Someone packs the whisk away carefully, ties it with practiced fingers, and tucks it into his sleeve. The wind shifts. In the distance, a conch horn sounds low and long, like the throat of a mountain waking up. You rise slowly, brush the dust from your knees, return the empty cup to the tray, and give a shallow bow, as is proper. Around you, other warriors do the same. The brazier is extinguished, the box is closed, and the silence cracks not all at once, but gently, like a pond thawing. This is the last tea you'll taste before the day turns into shouting. You retighten your armor straps, shift the weight of your katana at your hip, touch your pouch to confirm your bento is still there. It is. You glance at the others. Some smile faintly. Most just nod. It's not farewell, not yet. Just mutual acknowledgement that you've all shared something simple, silent, and necessary. The tea has done its job. You feel steady now. And ready. You never thought eating could make you feel inferior, but then again, you've never dined in a daimyo's tent before. Your unit has been stationed near the command post for a few hours, close enough to hear the shouts of couriers, the flapping of banners, and, more annoyingly, the clinking of porcelain. While you nibble on cold rice wrapped in yesterday's seaweed, the regional warlord, Lord Iyama, is enjoying what sounds suspiciously like a full-course banquet. Let's be clear, you don't resent it. Not exactly. He's a daimyo. After all, one of the powerful feudal lords with the land, wealth, and ridiculous hats to prove it. He's expected to eat well. In fact, part of his power is displayed through food. So yes, his lacquerware bento is twice the size of yours, carried by 3 servants, and smells like it was cooked by someone with both access to exotic ingredients and the spare time to braid scallions into decorative shapes. You sneak a glance as a servant lifts the lid. It's absurd. Delicate slices of grilled eel laid over vinegared rice, rolled omelets, so yellow they could light a room, pickled burdock root arranged like calligraphy. And somewhere in there, you're fairly certain, was a golden leaf floating in clear soup like a smug little treasure map. Mainstream historical fact food was a major marker of status in feudal Japan. The higher a samurai's rank, the more elaborate his meals. Daimyo had access to imported delicacies like sugar, citrus fruits, and fine sake ingredients far beyond the reach of foot soldiers, who sometimes subsisted on millet and bean paste. And now for your quirky tidbit, some daimyo were so obsessed with food presentation, they commissioned food-specific poetry to be recited during meals. Yes, someone's job was to compose haiku about tempura. You're still not sure if that sounds noble or incredibly awkward. Historians still argue whether battlefield luxury meals were a common occurrence or exaggerated in romantic retellings. Some believe daimyo kept their lavish habits even at war, bringing entire kitchen staffs with them. Others suspect these meals were more ceremonial, meant to show confidence to allies and enemies alike. Either way, the food was real. and it smelled divine. You shift uncomfortably as the wind carries the aroma toward your group. Grilled fish, fresh miso, a hint of sesame oil. You chew your dried radish with a little more determination than usual. Nearby, one of your fellow soldiers mutters, "I heard he's got pickled melons imported from Kyushu." Another rolls his eyes and adds, "They say he bathes in sake too." The first one considers this, then shrugs, might explain the shine. You're about to laugh when a servant brushes past, carrying what looks like a fifth-course dessert tray toward the commander's tent. You catch a glimpse of something pale, jelly-like, and glistening, possibly tofu, possibly revenge. Of course, not all high-ranking samurai ate so lavishly. Some preferred frugality. It was a badge of discipline. The famous General Uesugi Kenshin, for example, was said to eat little more than rice and pickles, even during peacetime. But others, let's just say their appetites were matched only by their sword collections. You think back to last winter, when you were posted at a small castle near the coast. The lord there insisted on oyster soup daily, even during blizzards. Couriers were sent in sleet to fetch them. One returned with frostbite. The lord simply asked if the oysters were fresh. A bug crawls across your bento lid, and you flick it away with a sigh. One day, maybe you'll be a captain. Maybe you'll get a lacquered box of your own, with compartments, and melon, and someone to describe your pickles in verse. But for now, you scrape up the last few grains of rice from your box and lick your fingertips clean. Then you close the lid and tie the wrapping cloth with the same careful knot you always use. Because even if your meal was humble, it was yours, and it got you this far. A courier rushes past. Dust follows. Orders are shouted. A conch blares in the distance. And from the daimyo's tent, laughter. You wonder what dessert tastes like just before battle. You've always followed the rules. Eat quietly. Bow to your elders. Never point your chopsticks at someone unless you're prepared to duel. But deep down, you know the truth. Samurai were not saints. And when it came to food, especially forbidden food, sometimes the call of the stew pot was stronger than the law. Take beef, for example. Officially, it's a no-go, has been for centuries. Thanks to centuries of Buddhist influence, eating four-legged animals is frowned upon, sometimes outright banned. The emperor's edicts say so. The monks say so. Even the village cats probably judge you for it, but that didn't stop people. It just made them quieter and craftier about how they chewed their meat. Especially the warriors. You remember a winter deployment in the mountains? Cold enough to make your teeth protest. The snow was knee-deep, and the rice ran out by the second week. One night, a squad returned from patrol, grinning like idiots, dragging behind them what they swore was a very large, very unlucky deer. It was not a deer. But stew was made. No one asked questions, not out loud. The scent filled the barracks, rich and warm and incredibly suspicious. It wasn't chicken, it wasn't boar, but it was good, and no one died. So, was it really a sin? Mainstream historical fact. For much of Japan's history, meat from four-legged animals was taboo, particularly under Buddhist influence during the Asuka and Nara periods. These dietary restrictions continued in various forms well into the Edo period. However, exceptions were common in remote or militarized regions, especially during famines or campaigns. Quirky tidbit. Some clans used euphemisms for forbidden meats. Horse was cherry blossom, boar became mountain whale, and beef, sometimes called medicine, for strength, because nothing says ethical loophole like calling brisket a health tonic. Historians still argue whether samurai privately ignored meat taboos more often than records show. Official chronicles conveniently skip over the bacon, but excavation of latrines, yes, really has revealed animal bones where only fish should have been. That's one way to dig up the past. You remember another time. back in your junior days. A senior officer hosted a quiet meal for his unit. No guests, no servants, just a small brazier, some suspiciously juicy skewers, and a warning, if anyone asks, we ate turnips. You weren't supposed to question what sizzled on those sticks. You still don't? But not all forbidden food was about meat. There were sacred plants, seasonal taboos, even color-based superstitions. Eating certain mushrooms on unlucky days was said to invite ghosts. Some herbs were reserved for monks. And don't even think about cooking garlic during the hour of the ox, unless you're trying to summon something you can't stab. You once saw a man slapped with a sandal for eating eel on a fasting day. To be fair, he was also bragging about it. Back in camp, stories swirl. One soldier claims his cousin's neighbor's wife once made stew from a raccoon. Another swears he tasted bear meat in Hokkaido, which made him dream of fish that whispered secrets. You're not sure what that means. You nod anyway. You reach into your pouch and pull out a rice ball wrapped in paper. Inside, a smear of something earthy and strong-smelling. It's not labeled, probably fermented bean paste, or maybe something else. You shrug and take a bite. Still warm, still edible, probably legal. There's something about food taboos that draws people in, not because they want to break the rules, but because food is intimate. It's part of you. And when rules say you may not eat this, it starts to feel like they're saying you don't get to decide who you are. And samurai, for all their armor and order, were still just humans under the lacquer, hungry, stressed, and tired of pickles. You finish the rice ball and wipe your hands. A lieutenant nearby unwraps a sausage-shaped mystery from his sleeve, sniffs it, and decides not to share. You pretend not to notice. The cook fire pops in the distance. Somewhere, someone's roasting something they shouldn't. You inhale deeply. It smells amazing. You'll never ask. But you'll remember the scent. Night falls, and the fire dims to an amber hush. The flickering light dances across your tent's thin walls as shadows stretch and soften like brush strokes on rice paper. Your armor is off finally. Your shoulders ache with relief. But before you can rest, before you can even think about sleep, you perform one last ritual. You bow to your rice pot. Okay, not literally, but close. You shuffle to the rear of camp where the makeshift kitchen stands just a low-roofed shelter with a clay hearth and a rack for drying herbs. And there, beside the embers, sits the cook, eyes half closed, stirring the night's last batch of soup like it's a prayer. You've done this before. You know the signs. There's something sacred happening. Not in the loud, flashy shrine kind of way. No incense, no chanting monks. Just food, warmth, and the quiet presence of gods you were raised to respect, but never quite understood. You remove your sandals at the entrance. Step in quietly. The ground is cool, packed earth. The kitchen smells of ginger, ash, and old miracles. Sitting in the corner is a kamado, a simple stove of clay and stone. But to the cook, and maybe to you too, it's more than that. It's the domain of Kojin, the kitchen god, a deity of fire, hearth, and domestic order. Not glamorous, not fierce, but essential, especially out here, where the wrong flame can ruin a meal or a mood. You glance at the doorway. Above it hangs a small straw doll, legs dangling, head slightly singed from smoke. It's a charm, meant to ward off kitchen mishaps. No one talks about it, but no one touches it, either. Mainstream historical fact. The kitchen god was a fixture in many Japanese households, even among samurai. Offerings of rice or salt were made regularly. During festivals, charms were burned to send updates on the household's behavior to the higher heavens. He wasn't just a superstition, he was part of the rhythm of life. Quirky tidbit. Some samurai kitchens kept tiny paper amulets near the pickling jars, not just to ward off spirits, but to prevent mold. Yes, holy talismans, deployed against bad fermentation. Apparently, ghosts and spoilage were seen as equally inconvenient. Historians still argue whether military camps maintained the full suite of domestic rituals, or if those practices were trimmed down during campaigns. Some suggest that small traveling shrines were set up near officer tents. Others believe field offerings were more symbolic, just salt sprinkled near the fire, or a bow before lighting kindling. You crouch near the hearth. The cook nods without looking. You don't speak. Not yet. The fire crackles softly, sending up a few lazy sparks. The soup tonight is modest miso, greens, maybe a chunk of tofu if you're lucky. But the cook stirs it like he's drawing circles in time. One round, then another, like he's coaxing memory from water. In the shadows, you spot other charms. A braid of garlic strung above the knife rack, a bowl of salt at the corner of the hearthstone, a dried fish head mounted above the entrance, eyes clouded, mouth open in a permanent O of surprise. These aren't decorations. They're defenses, not against enemies, but against rot, against bad luck, against kitchen spirits who might curdle your stew if you forget to bow. You've heard stories, everyone has, of meals that went sour for no reason, of cooks who got cursed because they dropped chopsticks during a festival. One man claimed his rice turned black after insulting a teacup. He said the kitchen spirit was angry, or maybe he just didn't wash the pot. Either way, he never cooked again. The cook finally ladles a scoop into your bowl. You bow slightly as you accept it. The miso is earthy, rich, deeper than the morning's version. The tofu is soft. The greens are bitter in the best way. You sip slowly, steam curling into your nose, the warmth settling behind your ribs like a friendly cat. No one else joins you. This moment isn't meant for a crowd. It's quiet nourishment, almost like meditation, or penance, or both. You think about your ancestors, about how many of them probably performed this exact act, eating silently, respectfully, with the hush of night wrapped around their shoulders. Maybe they believed the food would carry their wishes to the gods, or maybe they just knew that good broth made a bad day less heavy. You finish the soup, rinse your bowl, set it down facing east like you were taught. Then, before you leave, you sprinkle a pinch of salt near the hearthstone. Not much, just a gesture, a thank you to the unseen, a nod to the doll above the door, a hope that tomorrow's rice won't burn. You step outside. The night is cooler now. The stars hang like specks of rice in a black bowl. You breathe in deeply and walk back to your tent. You're sharpening your blade, but your eyes keep drifting to the fire pit. There's soup bubbling again, always soup. A broth so thin you can see the bottom of the pot, dotted with flecks of green onion and stray seaweed like some half-hearted constellation. You're not cooking today. You're just watching and thinking. Your katana rests across your lap. It's clean, polished, ready. But the question creeps in. Could you use this to stir a stew? The short answer, no. The long answer, you've seen people try. Samurai, despite the mythos, weren't above a little culinary improvisation. When resources were scarce and kitchen tools scarcer, you used what you had. And sometimes what you had was a sword. Mainstream historical fact, samurai were trained to respect their blades almost religiously. The katana was considered the soul of the warrior, not to be touched lightly, let alone used to poke dumplings out of a pot. But in the chaos of war, formalities sometimes gave way to necessity, and a long, curved edge can move a stubborn potato when nothing else is clean. Quirky tidbit. There are stories, half legend, half late-night campfire talk, about a samurai who once used the flat of his blade to flip rice cakes off a grill during a siege. He died the next day, not from battle, but from the sheer shame of using his katana as a spatula. They say he apologized to the sword before he went. Historians still argue whether these tales were real or moral parables, little warnings wrapped in humor. "Don't dishonor the blade" was a recurring theme in warrior codes, but also, rice cakes are really sticky. Back in camp, someone's trying to split firewood with a wakizashi. You wince, not because it won't work, but because it will, and the weapon will never quite forgive them. A cook runs over, scolding them with the fury of someone who's cleaned soot off steel one too many times. There were, of course, tools meant for kitchen work: long knives, ladles, iron skewers, but they didn't travel as easily as swords. So when you're on the move, a blade might just double as a cleaver, a skewer, or, heaven help you, a soup stirrer. That doesn't mean you should, of course. You remember your first campaign. A younger samurai used the tip of his blade to slice roasted sweet potato from a spit. A little bit show-off, a little bit hungry. He wiped the blade clean on his sleeve. Your captain nearly had a heart attack. Not because it was rude, because he dulled the edge on starch. Later that night, the same samurai tried to use his short sword to open a gourd of pickled vegetables. It worked, technically, but the tangy brine seeped into the gourd, and the sword stank of vinegar for weeks. He was never taken seriously again. Still, these moments aren't always about desperation. Sometimes they're about care. You once saw an old warrior shave yuba tofu skin into delicate ribbons with the tip of a tanto. It was done slowly, reverently, almost like grooming a horse. He said the food deserved the same focus as a duel. That made sense to you. After all, cooking is a kind of duel with time, hunger, the limitations of what you can carry, and sometimes your sword is the only tool sharp enough for the job. But even then, there are lines. You don't stab dumplings. You don't toast rice crackers on your blade. You definitely don't slice pickled daikon with the same edge you used to. Well, you know. So, you finish sharpening your katana. You set it back in its sheath, slowly, respectfully. You've never used it for cooking, and you don't plan to, but you can't deny you've been tempted. The soup in the pot is nearly done. The cook ladles it out with a real spoon, bless him, and passes bowls around. You accept yours, still hot, and feel the steam curl into your face. No weapons needed. You sit by the fire and sip slowly, the warmth seeping into your arms and chest. Around you, others eat in silence. The fire cracks. A bird calls in the trees. And for a moment, the only steel present is resting quietly in its scabbard, dignified, unstained by broth. You've been chewing the same root for 20 minutes. It's dry, stringy, and tastes like regret. But your teeth are working at it anyway. Because this isn't lunch, it's training. Not for your body, not even for your sword hand. This is training for your gut. You're in a field, kneeling under the sun with a circle of fellow warriors, all gnawing at various bits of dried root, roasted bean, or something that probably started life as a mushroom but now resembles an angry stone. No one complains. That's the point. Your stomach has to be ready for anything. Mainstream historical fact. Samurai were trained to endure hunger and digest austere food, especially during long campaigns or sieges. A well-conditioned warrior didn't just master the sword, he trained his body to accept meals that were sparse, strange, and sometimes slightly fermented beyond their prime. Quirky tidbit. There are accounts of samurai deliberately eating hard, dried foods to toughen the jaw and discipline the digestive tract. One training method involved chewing roasted soybeans without swallowing, just chewing until they dissolved, as a way to train patience. You tried that once. Your jaw still hasn't forgiven you. Historians still argue whether this gut training was truly regimented or more of a campfire tradition passed down from crusty veterans to wide-eyed rookies. Some schools taught specific chewing exercises, others emphasized fasting. One famous clan believed a warrior shouldn't eat until the 3rd hour after dawn, no matter how early he rose. Today's drill started with Kikaraj wood ear fungus, dried so thoroughly it snapped like a twig. You soaked it in hot water and still needed to chew it like you were wrangling leather. Then came dried burdock root fibrous, bitter, and a known test of willpower. Now you're gnawing gobo senbei, a type of bark-flavored cracker designed specifically to ruin morale. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. The field rations of war are rarely generous. You don't get fresh rice or warm soup mid-march. You get what you can carry: beans, nuts, salted radish, and if you're lucky, mochi pounded into dense, travel-sized bricks. And if your stomach isn't ready for that, you'll find out the hard way. You shift your weight as the trainer paces behind the group. Chew slower, he says. Don't swallow until it gives up. You glance down at the root. It's not giving up. It's organizing a rebellion. Someone coughs to your left. Another taps his cheek like he's trying to restart circulation. You all sit silently, teeth working, jaws flexing like polite wolves. You remember your first travel ration, a square of pressed rice with dried pickled plum inside. It looked harmless, but it had been dried under the sun for a week and packed so tight it bounced when dropped. You took one bite and realized your molars were not yet worthy. But you learned. Your body changed, your mouth toughened. You discovered that hunger doesn't mean weakness, it means readiness, and that food doesn't need to taste good. It just needs to keep you alive. Sometimes you trained with monks, stoic men who lived on roots, greens, and the occasional smug smile. Their meals were quiet, flavorless, and served in perfect symmetry. You once asked one why the soup had no salt. He replied, "Why should the soup work harder than the man?" You still don't know what that means. After chewing practice, you line up for the next drill, the hunger walk. It's simple. You march in full gear for an hour, with no water, no snack, no complaint. You do this after eating barely enough to fill half a rice bowl. The point isn't to make you suffer. It's to show you what battle will feel like after days of field rations and cold nights. To let your body get used to the feeling of burning calories it didn't get. You sling your gear over your shoulder. The sky is bright, the air dry, and your legs feel a little heavier than usual. Your stomach growls once quietly, like a dog not sure it should bark. But your feet move forward anyway. One step, then another. You think of all the warriors before you who chewed bark and gnawed beans and survived on pickled hope. You think about the men who marched across mountains with nothing but salted radish and boiled riverweed in their packs. And you think, if they could do it, I can too. At the end of the walk, you get a reward, a bite-sized rice cake, barely sweet, dusted with kinako powder. It melts on your tongue like sunshine. It's small, too small, but it's enough. You bow in thanks. Not to the trainer. To your stomach. It made it through another day. The rice is gone. You wake up in a smoky hut with the unmistakable smell of desperation wafting from the cook fire. Outside, the fog clings to the hills, thick as porridge. Your back aches, your fingers are stiff, and your stomach is already preparing an emotional complaint. Last night's rations were the last of the real rice. No deliveries came. No carts from the coast. Just the sound of footsteps in mud and the soft, reluctant simmering of what the cooks have scraped together this morning. You trudge out of the hut and into the makeshift kitchen area. The cook is already muttering to himself over a pot of something brownish, lumpy, suspiciously still. You nod at him. He nods back, the universal sign for, yes, it's edible. No, I don't want to talk about it. You squat beside the pot and peer inside. Tree bark. Again. Mainstream historical fact. During times of famine or prolonged siege, samurai and the people around them often had to get creative. Pine bark, ground into flour and mixed with water, became a common fallback. It was fibrous, vaguely nutty, and wildly unpleasant. but it had calories. Technically. Quirky tidbit. There's evidence that some samurai carried tiny satchels of roasted acorns, bitter and soaked in repeated changes of water to remove the toxins. If you forgot that part, well, let's just say battle wouldn't be your biggest concern that day. Historians still argue whether these extreme famine foods were daily fare during longer campaigns or saved only for the direst moments. Some believe entire regional diets shifted depending on seasonal access to wild edibles. Others think the bark bread stories were exaggerated later to romanticize warrior suffering. Either way, your breakfast today is very chewy. The cook ladles a grayish porridge into a bowl. You take it. It smells like wood glue and forest regret, but you eat it. Because that's what you do. Each bite is a challenge. It sticks to your teeth. It sticks to your memory. You add a pinch of wild salt harvested from river rocks yesterday. One of the scouts risked his ankles for it. You make a mental note to thank him, or name your next wartime blister after him. You look around camp. Everyone is in varying degrees of disappointment. A few warriors are gnawing on roasted roots. Someone is chewing what looks like a dried frog leg. Another is mashing chestnuts into a paste with the back of his knife. Food during famine is less about flavor, more about not falling over. You recall a moment from last summer marching through a forest, half-starved, when your unit found a patch of edible ferns. You cooked them into soup and toasted the leaves. For 2 days, everything tasted like green optimism. Then someone overdid it and got sick. Turns out some ferns require boiling 3 times. You try not to think about that now. Today's fare includes something that might be mushrooms, or possibly bark again. Sliced thin and hopeful. You chew with quiet determination. You've had worse. Maybe. You hear a rustle. A forager has returned mud-caked, triumphant, and holding a handful of wild greens and 2 frogs on a stick. Everyone perks up slightly. The cook claps once and takes the loot. Within minutes, the frogs are skinned, gutted, and sizzling over the embers. The smell is unexpected, not unpleasant. Kind of like roasted chicken if chicken had lived in a swamp and seen terrible things. You're lucky to get a leg. It's hot, oily, and tastes like victory. There's something bizarrely unifying about famine food. No one is better than anyone else. Rank doesn't matter when you're all chewing moss. The daimyo isn't eating gold leaf eel anymore. He's probably chewing roots too. You imagine him in his grand tent, delicately trying not to gag on mushroom porridge. Somehow, that makes you smile. Later, a scout finds a few wild persimmons shriveled, sour, and barely edible. He passes them around like treasure. You take a bite, it puckers your entire face into next week. But it's fruit, real fruit, and it breaks the bark monotony. You sit down, bowl in your lap, and look out over the hills. The fog is lifting slightly. Birds chirp. Somewhere, someone's laughing over a failed acorn stew. And in that moment, you feel, okay. Not full, not even comfortable, but alive. You survived another meal. You fed your body. And you didn't have to use your sword on the frog. Progress. The cup trembles slightly in your hand. Not from fear, not exactly, but your fingers feel looser than usual. Your breath is shallow. The air is cold. And the liquid in the small ceramic cup smells like polished rice, time, and a poor decision waiting to happen. Psych. It's not a party. It's not a celebration. This is the other kind of drinking, the ceremonial kind, the sip before battle kind, the kind where no one makes jokes because everyone's stomachs are too busy folding in on themselves. You raise the cup to your lips and take a small, slow sip. Warm, sharp, a little sweet. It burns on the way down, but not rudely, more like a firm pat on the back, like the drink is saying, yes, I know, but you're still here. Mainstream historical fact. Samurai sometimes partook in ceremonial sake before battle, either in small symbolic quantities or as part of formal rituals with their commanders. It wasn't about intoxication, it was about unity, courage, and a touch of ritual comfort before chaos. Quirky tidbit: in certain clans, warriors would write their death poems, drink a sip of sake, and then pour the rest onto the ground for the ancestors, a subtle way of saying this body is temporary, but this moment eternal. Historians still argue whether this practice was common on all levels of the samurai hierarchy or more limited to elite retainers and officers. Some sources describe entire pre-battle sake ceremonies. Others say it was a personal gesture, something you did alone, quietly, like checking your sword's edge or tying your final knot. You glance around the tent. Other warriors sit in silence, each with their own small cup. No one drinks deeply. That would be foolish. You're not trying to go into battle tipsy. You're trying to go into battle ready. Someone across the room recites a short verse under their breath. A death poem. Probably. You don't catch the words, but the rhythm is unmistakable. 5, 7, 5, haiku to the void. You take another sip. You've had stronger sake, better sake. There was a summer once, long ago, when your uncle brewed a batch so sweet it made your teeth ache. You drank it cold, on a riverbank, with your sandals off, and nothing on the horizon but clouds. That was another lifetime. This sake is simpler, earthier. It carries the heat of the campfire and the silence of the road. Someone probably brought it in a gourd tied to their saddle. You cradle the cup in both hands and stare into it. You think about what it means to drink before a fight, how something so small can carry so much weight. You wonder if it's courage in liquid form or just a very old distraction. Either way, it works. The nerves ease, just slightly. Your jaw unclenches. Your shoulders drop half an inch. You breathe. Nearby, the commander raises his cup not high, just enough for the firelight to catch the rim. He nods once. That's the toast. Nothing flowery. No long speeches. Just, we're doing this. You finish your sake. There's no clapping, no cheer, just the sound of cloth rustling as men stand, straighten their backs, and tuck their cups back into their pouches or set them on the ground like spent shells. You pull on your arm guards, fasten your sash, tighten your grip on the hilt of your sword. But there's something in your belly now, a slow, warm ember, a memory of rice turned into fire, a tiny gesture of comfort in a world that rarely offers it. And whether the gods heard your toast or not, you heard it. You're still here. You're still standing. And your hands are steady. The sky is darkening. Not the poetic kind of dusk. Either this one's thick, smoky, and laced with the smell of burning oil and singed wood. You're crouched inside what's left of a tower, your back pressed against a scorched beam, trying not to think about the fact that your dinner is currently buried under a pile of broken roof tiles. Sieges don't pause for meal breaks. You shift your weight and wince. Your legs ache. Your stomach is tightening with that slow, hollow ache it gets when food is overdue. There's no fire tonight, too risky, no hot tea, no simmering soup, just a cold wind, the sound of distant shouting, and the faint hope that your rice ball from 2 days ago is still edible. You fish through your pouch and pull it out. It's flat, cracked. The seaweed wrap is peeling off like tired paint, but it's there. You bite in, carefully. It's dry but still recognizable. The pickled plum in the center has fermented a little more than usual, but you'll take it. The saltiness makes your mouth water, which helps, kind of. Mainstream historical fact: sieges in feudal Japan could last weeks, even months. Samurai caught inside were often reduced to surviving on preserved rations, cold rice, dried root, pickles, anything that could be stored or carried in. Fires were rare, as smoke could reveal your position. Meals were silent, brief, and tactical. Quirky tidbit. During the siege of Osaka in 1615, some soldiers reportedly chewed strips of rawhide from their armor when food ran out. Not because it was nourishing, just because it gave their jaws something to do. You look at your gauntlet now and wonder if it's seasoned. Historians still argue whether siege rations were carefully planned or utterly improvised. Some sources suggest elite samurai carried emergency provisions sewn into the linings of their armor. Others claim they depended on castle stores and whatever dried goods hadn't been claimed by rats yet. Tonight, you depend on luck. You find a few roasted soybeans tucked into a fold of cloth. They rattle in your palm like tiny bones. You eat them slowly, one at a time. They're hard, dry, and oddly comforting. You think about how many other hands, over centuries, have cupped beans like these in silence before a final charge. Someone nearby unwraps a bit of dried fish. The smell is sharp and familiar. It cuts through the smoke in the air, reminding you of better days, warm kitchens, shouted orders, pots of miso bubbling with sliced scallions and tofu. You close your eyes for a moment, pretending you're there. But you're not. The fire's dead. The tower is half collapsed. You're down to a handful of pickles, a broken rice cracker, and whatever else is hiding in your pouch. You check it again and find, miracle of miracles, a tiny ball of mochi. It's been crushed into an unflattering shape, but it's still sticky, still sweet. You pop it into your mouth and let it sit there like a promise. Outside, someone calls your name. You step out, chewing as you go. The wind bites. The night is loud with the rustle of armor and soft-footed movement. Your comrades nod to you, each with their own half-eaten ration clutched in a palm or tucked into a sleeve. There's no formal meal tonight, just small bites between orders. Someone leans against a wall, munching dried burdock like it's fine cuisine. Another swigs from a tea flask that's long gone cold. One man tears open a pouch of miso paste and eats it straight, eyes watering, expression unreadable. You all eat like you fight quickly, quietly, and with no time to waste. Your hands are stained with ash, your knuckles are raw, but your belly, well, it's not full, but it's not empty either, and that's enough. You huddle with the others beneath a half-broken archway. No words, just chewing, just waiting. The stars above are hidden behind smoke, but the earth is still solid. The food, though sparse, still fills the spaces it needs to. Your mouth, your gut, your courage. And as the horn sounds again in the distance, you swallow the last bite of mochi, dust off your hands, and rise. You are fed. Barely. But you're ready. The sun is high, the mud is drying, and for once you're not bleeding. You're alive, which means it's time to eat something that doesn't taste like panic. Victory has a flavor, and today it's grilled eel. Your unit returned at dawn, limping and half-starved, boots caked in the leftovers of a trampled field. The enemy's retreat was messy, so were you, but now, in the warm aftermath of surviving, you get something rare, a real meal. The kitchen crew is already at work, sleeves rolled up, knives flashing. Skewers of eel sizzle on an iron grate over a roaring fire, their skin crisping as the sauce caramelizes. A sweet, salty glaze drips into the flames, releasing that unmistakable smell char. Soy, sugar, and smoke. It's enough to make your stomach whimper. You sit on an overturned crate, still in half your armor, and wait your turn. Mainstream historical fact. After a battle, surviving samurai were sometimes treated to celebratory meals. Grilled eel, mochi, and sweet rice were common dishes used to replenish energy and lift morale. It wasn't just about nutrition, it was a way to mark survival. Quirky tidbit. Victory meals were sometimes prepared with extravagant flair, including edible gold leaf sprinkled onto rice or desserts. The idea was to dazzle, not just fill the belly. You once saw a rice cake so shiny It could blind a monk. You ate it anyway, with reverence. Historians still argue whether these victory feasts were common for foot soldiers or reserved only for high-ranking officers. Some evidence points to larger armies rationing celebratory portions, carefully just enough for taste. Not indulgence, but here, today, you seem to have lucked out. Your bowl arrives. The rice is hot, sticky, steaming. The eel glazed, golden, impossibly tender rests on top like a badge of honor. You inhale deeply. The scent goes straight to your brain. You take a bite, and everything stops. It's perfect. You chew slowly, not just for taste, for gratitude. This is not bark. This is not moldy pickles or emergency millet. This is real, rich, almost decadent. For the first time in weeks, your mouth is joyful. There's more. Pounded mochi, soft, chewy, dusted with kinako powder, passed down the line like treasure. You pop a piece into your mouth and feel your jaw fight it briefly before surrendering to the stretch. It tastes like victory. And teeth glue. A young boy offers a tray of pickled vegetables arranged in careful spirals. Lotus root, cucumber, radish dyed pink with plum vinegar. You recognize the effort. Someone actually cared today. You accept the tray, bow your thanks. Pick at the radish first. It's crisp, bright, almost playful. The cucumber follows, cold and bracing. The lotus root, a bit of crunch, a lot of symbolism. In some clans, lotus root was served after battle to let victory pass through smoothly. Thanks to its holes, you eat that one slowly, imagining good fortune sliding effortlessly through your life. Nearby, someone pours sake into a chipped cup and passes it around. Not for toasting, just sipping. The mood is light, but not loud. No one brags, no one boasts. You all know how close it was. Someone didn't come back, a few someones. But for now, you honor them the way samurai always have with food. You take another bite of eel and remember a phrase your mentor once said after a close call, "Eat well, you paid for it." You never asked what he meant exactly. You didn't need to. After the meal, there's silence. That satisfied, full-bellied hush where no one wants to speak in case they scare it away. You lean back, cradle your cup, and let your spine uncoil for the first time in days. The world feels stable again. In the distance, laundry flaps on a line. Someone plays a flute badly. A dog barks. Life creeps back into the cracks. You find a scrap of leftover plum jam smeared on the edge of a rice cracker. Someone abandoned it. You scoop it up with your finger and taste it sweet, sharp, like summer in syrup form. You pause. You laugh. Just once, quietly, but it's real. You're still here. You're fed. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you are full. The battlefield is behind you now, replaced by the steady rhythm of daily camp life. But here's a truth you never thought about much. Until recently, even samurai have kitchen politics. You're sitting cross-legged near the mess area, watching the food line form. The rice smells good today. Not freshly harvested noble estate good, but someone rinsed it properly good. And that's something. But you know the real intrigue isn't in the pot. It's in the ladle. Specifically, who holds it? The kitchen is run by a small crew of cooks, all technically lower in status than the fighters they feed, but practically, they're the most powerful people you know. They control portions, they notice who goes for seconds, and they absolutely know who tries to skip cleaning duty in exchange for an extra rice ball. Mainstream historical fact: in samurai barracks and military camps, kitchens were strictly hierarchical. Head cooks often had years of experience and were trusted with ration decisions, food safety, and morale management. Though not warriors themselves, they held enormous sway over the health and discipline of the unit. Quirky tidbit: there were rules unspoken but ironclad about ladle size. The senior cook used a longer-handled ladle not just for reach, but for symbolic authority. If a junior cook dared to serve with the big ladle, expect rice flying and a demotion back to dishwashing. Historians still argue whether food distribution was as rigidly controlled in smaller outposts as it was in castles. Some suggest looser structures during war campaigns, while others point to documents outlining exact rice measurements per rank, adjusted for age, injury, or even temperament. You think about that as you approach the front of the line. The head cook eyes you. She's seen you eat. She knows you sometimes come back under inventory checking pretense. But today, she gives you a solid scoop. No judgment. No extra, either. You nod. Respect the system. A younger soldier behind you mutters, "Bet the captain gets 2 scoops." You shrug. Probably true. You've seen higher-ranked officers with stacked trays, side dishes, even grilled fish, while the rest of you are still debating whether your soup has flavor or just temperature. You sit down, tray in hand, and glance around. The new recruits eat first, always supervised. They're watched like hawks to ensure they don't hoard pickles or spill soy sauce on the tatami again. One once tried to barter mochi for tobacco. It ended in tears and dish duty. Then come the middle ranks. Like you. No-nonsense eaters. You get what you get. You learn not to complain. You definitely don't point out that your pickle is smaller than your neighbor's. And then, off to the side, the officers. They sit under a shaded awning with trays that gleam unnaturally clean. Their rice shines a bit more. Their soup has things floating in it, carrots, maybe mushrooms. Once, you saw a slice of actual meat. You nearly wept. You scoop up your own rice. It's a little dry, but the pickled radish is sharp and bright. The miso is thinner than you'd like, but it's hot. You chew slowly. It's not about speed. It's about signaling, yes, I'm grateful. No, I'm not a problem. You hear the head cook bark at a clumsy server. Someone spilled salt. That's not just a mess. It's bad luck. Another cook rushes over with a broom and a pinch of rice to scatter for spiritual balance. You pretend not to watch, but you are watching. Everyone is. After the meal, you head toward the washing station. There's a list pinned to the post. You're on dish duty tomorrow. Again, you sigh, then smile. You're starting to think the head cook has her own list, and it isn't written down. But here's the thing, you don't resent it. Because when the rice runs short, she's the one who knows who got extra last time. When someone falls ill, she's the one who notices who left half their bowl untouched. When morale dips, she's the one who quietly sprinkles roasted sesame on top of the rice without saying why. It's not just food. It's a balance of power, trust, and observation. A kitchen hierarchy held together not by titles, but by ladles, glances, and the quiet understanding that everyone wants one more scoop. You finish your meal, wash your tray, return it carefully. The cook gives you a nod. Tiny, unreadable. Maybe tomorrow's miso will be thicker. Maybe not. You're standing in a modern convenience store, 4 centuries too late. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. Refrigerated shelves line the aisles. And yet, somehow, here you are eyeing a neatly wrapped rice ball with a little sticker that says, "Umeboshi." You blink, you squint, you reach for it. It's the same plum, same shape, same salty scowl, same sharp kick to the back of your throat that makes your eyes water and your ancestors nod approvingly. Welcome to the strange truth. The snacks of samurai still walk among us. Mainstream historical fact. Many foods that sustained samurai during the Sengoku and Edo periods are still popular in Japan today. Rice balls, onigiri, soy-based snacks, pickles, tsukemono, dried fish, mochi, and miso soup have all persisted not just as nostalgia, but as daily staples. You take the onigiri and unwrap it. The seaweed crackles just right. Inside seasoned rice, a puckered plum, and the quiet sense that you're participating in a very old ritual just with air conditioning. Quirky tidbit. Some traditional rice crackers senbei are still stamped with patterns that mimic old clan crests or battlefield banners. You once bought one shaped like a katana. It broke in two with a sound that made you strangely emotional. Historians still argue whether this food continuity is cultural inertia or intentional homage. Some say the flavors persisted because of taste and convenience. Others believe there's something deeper at work, an edible connection to history, a kind of culinary time travel. You stroll past the freezer aisle. There mochi in plastic trays, kinako packets, even yokon, the dense red bean jelly that once fueled exhausted warriors on long treks. You pocket one for later, not because you're preparing for combat, just a Zoom meeting, but it feels spiritually adjacent. Back in camp, your mind drifts there as you chew. You remember the crunch of dried daikon between your teeth, the weird texture of roasted soybeans, the taste of pickled mountain vegetables you never learned the name of. All of it's still here, transformed, packaged, but recognizable, a through line across centuries, drawn in soy and salt. You sit down on a bench, unwrap a senbei. It's thick, dark, lacquered with sweet soy glaze. You take a bite. It snaps satisfyingly. You chew slowly, remembering. It was food like this that waited in your pouch during battle. Food that soothed you when everything else frayed. Food that reminded you of home, or duty, or, at the very least, not dying of hunger. It's different now, of course, but not that different. Your cup of convenience store miso has flecks of green onion, bits of tofu, and a warmth that crawls up into your cheeks. You sip and close your eyes. The plastic doesn't matter. The broth tastes like memory. You finish the meal and walk toward the exit. On the way out, you pass a display of novelty warrior-themed snacks onigiri with tiny banners, boxes shaped like armor, little packs of pickled vegetables labeled victory rations. You laugh, softly. They have no idea how accurate that is. The scroll is faded, ink smudged like an old bruise. You're squinting at it beneath a paper lantern in the corner of a quiet archive, tracing brush strokes that describe not battles, not oaths, but soup. That's right, soup. You came here expecting war records, maybe a map or two. Instead, you found a monk's notes on millet gruel consistency. And honestly, you're thrilled. Because if you want to know what samurai really ate, this is the treasure trove. Not the bold, inked tales of victory, but the kitchen logs, the shopping lists, the handwritten complaints about spoiled tofu. Mainstream historical fact. Much of what we know about samurai diets comes not from dramatic battlefield accounts, but from temple records, household menus, agricultural manuals, and the occasional court document that mentions food rationing or ceremonial feasts. The daily meals of warriors were practical, seasonal, and often written down without fanfare. Quirky tidbit. One 16th century monk recorded the weekly pickling schedule of a samurai household down to the hour. Daikon sliced at third bell, salted before incense. He wrote, he never mentioned the names of the warriors, just the vegetables. Priorities. Historians still argue whether the surviving food records reflect the true habits of most samurai or just the quirks of the literate elite. After all, most scribes were priests or scholars, not swordsmen, but then again, someone had to count the radishes. You carefully turn the page. Here's a list of ingredients for boiled mountain stew, wild greens, tofu scraps, miso, dried mushroom, pine needle optional. Another page describes an official meal served before a provincial campaign, rice, broth, plum, and, was that 3 slices of boiled yam, size regulated. You smile. Someone was measuring yam slices before heading into battle. Of course they were. You find another document, more of a poem. Actually, it compares a bowl of barley soup to the steady resolve of a loyal retainer. Floury, yes, but you've eaten that soup. And yes, it's dependable. Like glue. Then there's the inventory scroll, carefully inked columns tallying sacks of rice, jars of miso, bundles of dried fish. One entry reads, 1 gourd of pickled plums sour to the point of offense. You'd swear you've met that plum personally. What's striking isn't the content, it's the care. These records weren't jokes, they were survival. Food meant energy, morale, status. A spoiled batch of rice could cause mutiny. A well-cooked meal might quiet nerves before a siege. Even a thin broth had to be right. You reach the final page of the scroll and find something odd, a rough sketch of a bento box, labeled compartments, tiny notes. One says, plum center, another, fish. If moon phase is favorable, you wonder who drew it. A cook? A bored scribe? A samurai who liked to plan lunch as much as he liked to sharpen swords? You lean back. Everything you've eaten, everything you've endured, it's all there, in faded ink and delicate paper. Proof that your story wasn't just steel and silence, it was rice and pickles and slightly judgmental soup. Outside, the wind shifts the paper door. Lantern light flickers. You think of all the hands that wrote these lines, all the warriors who chewed dried seaweed by firelight, who fretted over the last slice of tofu, who carried rice bricks like treasure and thanked their kitchen gods when the stew didn't burn. You're part of that story now, or rather you always were. You roll up the scroll carefully, bow your head, not to the warriors, to the vegetables, to the cooks, to the monks who thought to write this all down. Because history isn't just battles. Sometimes it's soup. Your armor creaks as you kneel. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the eastern sky has started to lighten, and with it comes that slow, sinking weight in your gut. You know what day it is. This is the morning you've rehearsed your entire life. The kind of day where the food tastes like memory and movement. And nothing else. You have your weapons. Your horse is saddled. Your orders are clear. But before anything happens, before anyone mounts up or raises a banner or gives a speech, you eat. One last meal in armor. Mainstream historical fact. Before battle, samurai often observed quiet. Personal rituals, sharpening blades, composing poetry, bowing to their armor. A simple, deliberate meal was part of that preparation. Not a feast, not a farewell banquet, just something warm, familiar, and steadying. Today's rice is plain. No fish, no pickles, just a simple brick, steamed and pressed, wrapped in bamboo. You open it slowly, almost reverently. The surface is slightly glossy, still warm from the pot. A single umeboshi sits in the middle, wrinkled, crimson, defiant. You take a bite. It's dry, it's sharp, it tastes like focus. Next, the miso, just a small cup. You cradle it in both hands, fingers slipping into the old grooves of the ceramic. It's thinner than usual. The tofu's fallen apart, but the broth is still hot, still salty. Still capable of telling your body we're doing this again. Quirky tidbit. Some samurai added herbs to their miso on the morning of battle, not for taste, but for clarity. Ground perilla, powdered sansho, dried ginger. It wasn't cuisine, it was armor for the stomach. Historians still argue whether the last meal of a samurai was planned, or merely whatever the camp had left. Some sources describe deliberate simplicity rice, plum, tea. Others hint at symbolic items round mochi for unity, lotus root for passage, daikon for bravery. What's true, hard to say, but what you eat matters. Always has. You take another sip of tea. It's cold, but strong, astringent enough to make your tongue twitch. You let it sit in your mouth for a moment before swallowing. A ritual in itself. Around you, others are doing the same. No one talks. No one hurries. Spoons scrape bowls. Tea flasks clink shut. Chopsticks are wiped and pocketed. One man bows to his food before eating. Another closes his eyes after swallowing his last bite. You wrap your rice cloth slowly, fold it tight, and tuck it back into your pack. It's empty now, but you'll carry it anyway. Something about that feels right. The morning's mist curls around your boots. Your captain steps out of the tent, armored and unreadable. He nods once. It's time. You stand. You don't feel strong, not exactly, but you feel centered, grounded, full not just with food, but with the memory of every meal that brought you here. The hard crackers, the grilled eel, the pine bark, the cold beans, the stolen sausage-shaped something, the frog, the miso, always the miso. You touch your belly, almost instinctively, a quiet thank you. Then you adjust your gauntlets, tighten your belt, and walk toward the horse line. Your pouch bounces gently at your hip. It holds nothing now but crumbs and steam and the ghost of plum. But that's enough. You mount up. You ride. And now the battle fades. You step down from the saddle. Your armor is gone. The ground beneath you is soft again, tatami, not trampled earth. You're no longer holding chopsticks or swords. Just silence. The last meal is long behind you, but the warmth lingers. The taste of rice, salt, and survival rests on your tongue like a lullaby that never quite ends. You remember the way steam curls from a soup bowl, the way dried fish crackles in your fingers, the way a sip of tea can still the entire world. You're tired now, but in the good way, the kind of tired that comes after knowing you've walked through something old and strange and real. You've worn the armor, you've chewed the roots, you've survived the pickles, you've laughed quietly at a roasted frog leg and a rice cracker that looked like a crest. You've eaten like a samurai, and now, you rest like one. Let the weight lift from your shoulders. Let your breath grow slower. Let your thoughts drift soft and aimless, like cherry blossoms floating across a quiet stream. There's no more to do tonight. No meals to pack, no miso to stir, just sleep. And maybe, in your dreams, a cup of tea. Warm, bitter, perfect.